Have y'all ever recalled a show or movie that has done any of the above? Has either showed a black token character, which means he or she is just there for racial diversity and is disposable and brings nothing to the plot. Either demonstrated black women following the stereotype as the angry black woman or the black gangster thug stereotype for the guys. Or has either put one dimensional sided characters that don't offer any other personality towards the main plot or the character other than being this black sidekick or the sassy black best friend. If you recall this from any film or media you've watched, you've basically watched a misrepresentation of black people in Hollywood. From the lack of diverse representation on the screen to the unequal pay and opportunities given to black actors and filmmakers, the film industry has a history of systematic racism, and I'm here to speak on it. My name is Daniel Jenny Fuji, I'm here to speak on it. Yeah. One of the major problems with black representation in Hollywood is the lack of diversity in the terms of roles and characters available to black actors. A lot of the time, black actors are degraded to stereotypical one dimensional roles such as the sidekick or the sassy black best friend or the angry black woman or man. The black best friend supports the main character, often with sass or attitude and insight on relationships in life. The thug usually is a black character that has done stereotypical drug dealing or any crime of that nature, which tends to be involved in jail activity and as a criminal with criminal background or history with crime. The crazy woman, sassy black woman with an attitude all the time. These roles just put harm and stereotypes towards us black people. Because if you think of it, young people are going to watch these films, and if they're introduced to these stereotypes, it traps young people and puts them in a box and labels them because they're nothing more than their stereotypes they see. This also produces systematic racism because if white people are watching these films who aren't really in a diverse environment, of course they'll think as black people as a loud person or a thug. These views towards us won't stop because the media keeps pushing these characters. Then the young naive kid that never left, maybe his hometown in Nebraska may watch it and is obviously going to think these stereotypes are relevant in the real world. He may also think about these microaggressions such as, oh, you're chill for a black person, or you're pretty different, or I never knew black people are like this when he's introduced to black people that are different than what he's seen on TV in the real world. It's a problem because the judgments set on black people hinder us from growing as a community because characters like these are so one-sided, which promote us in a negative light rather than against these stereotypes. In the 1920s, the 1910s and 1920s, most black people and black characters were played by white men with blackface, which represents minstrel shows. They tie into the white privilege of white people having this advantage over us to look like a fool and profit off of it, and nobody bats an eye. It also ties into the Jim Crow laws that were in place at that time. During these times, black people felt worthless, while also white people got to get paid as to act black as mockery. Most were depicted as foolish in a demeaning way, which hurt them and were not true. Also, common roles played by black actors were butlers or servants, even if they got the chance to. But in the 1930s, movies romanticized the Old South and servants and relied heavily on stereotypes like black people uneducated and foolish. But 90% of the film industry was white. But in the 1940s, the NAACP made an agreement to stop relying on these stereotypes in movies and allowed African Americans more opportunities on screen and behind the scenes revolved around black actors and actresses having Eurocentric features and more light skinned actors showcased as the star. But in the 1950s, it brought more opportunities to black actors and allowed them more screen time between the white and black people. Some well-known movies that were showcased in the 50s that were mostly an all-black cast were St. Louis Blues in 1958 and The Edge of the City in 1957. But from my personal opinion, what I have to say on that is black actors' became more diverse and complex. And more recently, movies like Get Out, directed by a black man, Jordan Peele, gave actors and actresses an opportunity to present themselves for different roles that are just not one-dimensional characters, but have a multiple complex personality to them, and I think he does a great job diversifying a cast towards a black dominated cast. More recently, 35% of the black people in North America believe that there is a sufficient representation of black people in American films, which is very low. I think growing up when you're tainted with negative stereotypes towards your skin color, it's demeaning. And it's crazy because so many people turn a blind eye towards it and just keep watching. I think one example that depicts a stereotype is when I was younger, I've watched a show called Drake and Josh, and it was a character called Helen. See, I watched a show called Drake and Josh a lot when I was younger, and I recently revisited this and realize the amount of microaggression and stereotypes placed on her. Helen was basically a supervisor head at the premier movie theater that Josh worked at every day. Those two main characters were white, and Helen was black. And the movie theater hangout spot was where they frequently met up most of the time after their school or whatever. Yeah, I personally believe she portrayed a stereotypical angry black woman because the way she was always mad and was always lashing out on Josh all the time. Um, it's portrayed a sense of humor to kids because, like, obviously as kids we're gonna love it because it's funny no matter what Josh does. She always blamed him and got mad at him even when it's the customer's fault, but I think it was just she had a demeaning and loud personality, which ties into the loud, crazy black woman persona stereotype. And the crazy part of it all is that I vividly remember one scene that she got really mad at Josh for not taking out the trash because that was his duty while working there. Helen got really mad and threatened Josh. And the customers were mostly white and they were just like laughing and she's like, oh yeah, she's definitely crazy. You know how those ones where like you have the scene and at the end of the scene, like people start looking at her and everyone's like, oh yeah, she's definitely crazy. Like, yeah, she's definitely a mad. Like they've literally portrayed the scene that like she's like obviously like a mad woman. And for me, I'm like, bro, that's the biggest microaggression ever. I'm like when I vividly remember that, I'm just like, oh, okay, it's funny when I'm young, but when I got older, I'm just like, wow. But yeah, her whole personality was being aggressive, and I think when you're younger, you take it as a funny joke, but now you're generally realizing like this is that I think number one, her personality was always aggressive, which is like there was just so one sided. There's nothing more to her, and for two, we as the audience are reminded that she's crazy by the reaction of the white people who are around her, which just pushes the stereotype even further. It's like it ruins my mind. I'm like I don't know. But I think that's the main example that most recently that like stereotypes are more involved with the representation of how actors are in Hollywood. It's just one dimensional roles, and that's a vivid example that I can show you. I think for the Bible quote I have where I merely progress what I'm talking about, I tried to find two. One was John 7, verse 24. Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly. Or Romans 12. I mean, Romans chapter 10, verse 12. For there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. The same Lord is the Lord of lords, and all are richly who blesses and calls upon him. And I believe this Bible quote goes along with what I'm speaking about. John 7 or what am I saying? My fault. It basically tells us not to judge from appearance and judge correctly by how a person behaves. There's no difference between a black and white person's appearance, and we should not judge by skin color. I think it does not define a person how their skin color is. I think it defines how they act. And there isn't a discrete, concrete connection for this verse that relates to Hollywood, but I think um, John 7:24 relates to the industry as a whole, towards filmmakers, directors, and the higher ups to not judge merely on appearance or whatever the criteria they're looking for. Like you have to be light skinned, very Eurocentric features. I think it's more towards how the actor or actresses act instead, not just okay they look good or they have white hair that fits my criteria, and because that's what pushes the stereotype where I mean, that's what pushes white people to be more in the industry rather than black people being left behind. And some expectations that they put on actors mainly base their beauty standards on Eurocentric bodies, hairstyles, and features. I think when it comes to Hollywood, everyone should be given a chance and not feel left out. Instead of showing prejudice judgment, I feel like every person of color should feel included, not feel at the bottom tier list for the industry just because they have a darker skin tone or not the right skin tone pattern. And in conclusion, I think Hollywood as a whole has improved over the years in terms of representation, but it still has a little bit to go and improvement. And to show that Black people can be represented and equally as able to perform as any other race. As we can see in Black Panther, it's a Black dominated cast and it's a more uplifting movie towards the Black people. I feel like it could be done, but I think it could be done more and more for all. It doesn't have to be a superhero film. It doesn't have to be like I feel like as a person of color, I see Black Panther as like yes, I see a black actor as my superhero, but I think it could be done with many more platforms across all different type of plots, all different types of You know what I'm saying? Like as a young child, I didn't want to wait 13, 14 years to see a black character be, in the big screen like that. But I think it could be done many, many more. And stereotypes, the white privilege of actors and filmmakers, and microaggressions still occur